OneX Developer Podcast.
Rolling.
We're doing that now. We're doing this now.
Cutting that out.
Okay. Well, hello, welcome back.
Hey, it's Brendan.
And Colin. This is the OneX Developer Podcast.
Yeah, welcome back.
This is episode 3?
3, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, we had to do a little bit of backtracking, but I think 3. We're going to talk about code of ethics today in open source projects. Yeah.
Yeah, I think more specifically, I want to talk about, what is this episode about? It's about, politics in open source software, I guess. Without getting, weird. I feel like, okay, you know what? I think I said the word politics, and a lot of people probably stopped the podcast right there.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think we're not gonna really get political. I would say it's more about, it's putting kind of if someone has an open source project and they kind of insert their own values into the project somehow. I already said code of ethics, so that's one way to do it, but I think that's kind of the more general thing. Is what responsibility or what how can a open source maintainer do that ethically? Should they do that? Can they do that?
I mean, it's open source, it's in the name, right? So I can just ignore it, right?
I suppose, as much as you can ignore any license, right? There are some parts of open source software that just by using the software you're agreeing to, right?
Yeah, in a way. So let's get into it. I've got 3 examples that I can think of. The first one, I think probably some people listening to this would have heard of. This is the SQLite Code of Ethics, which I really only found out about recently. But apparently it's been like this for a long time, and I guess a lot of people find it kind of funny. Should I read this, or should I just
I think it's okay. Yeah, that one section, and then I think those 2 sections right there, I think are okay.
Okay, yeah. The purpose of the SQLite Code of Ethics. The founder of SQLite and all of the current developers of the time when this document was composed have pledged to govern their interactions with each other, with their clients, and with the larger SQLite user community in accordance with the Instruments of Good Works from Chapter 4 of this Rule of St. Benedict, hereafter called the Rule. The Code of Ethics has proven its mettle in thousands of diverse communities for over 1,500 years and has served as a baseline for many civil law codes since the time of Charlemagne. Scope of application. No one is required to follow the rule, to know the rule, or even to think that the rule is a good idea. The founder of SQLite believes that anyone who follows the rule will live a happier and more productive life, but individuals are free to dispute or ignore that advice if they wish. And then it goes on to say that all the developers basically try to live by this rule. The rule being that there's 72 of them here, but it's kind of generic, definitely Christian influenced guide for how to live a good life. Right.
Are there specific references to Christ and or Christianity within the 72 rules there?
I see a lot of God. Here. Number 7 is pray to your enemies in the love of Christ. Pray for your enemies in the love of Christ. So yeah, Christ specifically is mentioned, which is interesting.
So it is, yeah, it's explicitly Christian.
But you're completely allowed to ignore it and not even know that it exists. I think probably a lot of people who use SQLite don't know that it exists.
I had never heard about this. I'm learning about this for the first time.
So this is an interesting part. So no one is required to follow the rule, to know the rule, or even to think that the rule is a good idea. Do you think that the rule is a good idea? Not the rule as as it is, but as part of SQLite?
I don't really know what it means to impose a rule if no one's required to follow it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
do I think it's a good idea to have a rule like that? I don't know. It seems beyond the scope of any open source project. It almost seems like he's saying there, that the author is saying, this is how we're going to conduct our lives. It's not just like you're going to use this software in accordance with the LGPL or whatever. It's like we're trying to conduct our lives in this way. That seems like an odd thing for any open source project to put into the open source project to me. It seems well beyond the scope of any software at all, right?
It does feel that way. And I kind of get the feeling that, no one is required to even know the rule or to think that it's a good idea is almost a way of like preemptively absolving themselves of that, right? It's like, well, basically, I feel like kind of that comes from a place of like, look, if you don't believe in Jesus Christ, don't get mad at me. I didn't say you had to.
Yeah.
But it's interesting in a way because I mean the rule is, if you overlook the religious element of it, and I haven't read the whole thing, I don't think, but scrolling through it looks like things that I think we can mostly agree with, right? Number 5, do not steal. I think we can all kind of agree. Some of them are a little weird, I guess. Love fasting. Clothe the naked, that's good. Bury the dead. Generally, yeah, I guess. Do not nurse a grudge. That's good advice. Be not addicted to wine. No mention of Boulevard Brewing Company, so I think we're in the clear there. But I don't know. It's interesting.
I do think it's interesting, and I think that one thing I will say, I think that a lot of open source projects and a lot of like online discourse is really are in need of like a way to organize communities. And I think that's what he's saying, the author is saying in this code of ethics, is that this is a model for organizing a community that has worked for 1,500 years. And, this was used in monastic communities as a way to organize people around a set of common projects, basically. I just don't know what it means to include that in an open source project.
Right. Yeah, when it's not enforced, and it's interesting.
And it almost sounds to me like there were a core set of developers when SQLite was originally developed. They all kind of shared these beliefs and thought it was a good idea to live that way and to kind of organize the community around those ideas. But again, I don't know what it means to put that into an open source project, then put it out into the world and say like, we've all kind of agreed that living by these rules is a good idea. You don't have to. It's like, okay. I just really don't know what that means.
Well, I think there might be some value in saying that the current developers and founders abide by this. Because when you adopt a technology like SQLite, which is something that a lot of stuff is leaning on in your project, you're kind of buying into these people almost more so than the project, right? Like, I know people that will whenever there's like some big fiasco in some open source project, sometimes people will say, hey, I'm not using this anymore because I don't know what these guys are going to do. There was a thing, I don't know if I'm even allowed to say now, because there was a thing where like Rust updated the Rust maintainers updated their guidance on using the name Rust. Like, you couldn't use their logo unless you met these certain things and all this. And a lot of people just said, like, I'm not using Rust anymore because even if they do walk this back, which I think they did, am I going to use some project that's going to, like, I don't know, DMCA strike me for using their logo in my video that's promoting their language or whatever? So I don't know. I think it's interesting to say that we do this. I think there's value there.
That is a good point. That there's always there's always people behind any open source project, and the way that, I don't know, we often don't have any clear idea of how they have chosen to present themselves. Like most of the open source projects I use, I have no idea how the maintainer feels about anything.
Yeah. If I look at the code of ethics of an open source project, and their rule number 3 is do murder, I think I'm going to rethink using their software.
Yeah, that's fair. It puts you in a real ethical quandary.
I think so. So here's another example I found recently. So shout out to Tyriz and his project Discord Chat Exporter. So this is on GitHub. It's the user is TYRRRZ, and the project is Discord Chat Exporter. So I was doing some little LLM thing. I was trying to like train a little bot on chat logs. So I was exporting chat logs from Discord, and Discord Chat Exporter by Tyriz is a great little tool for that. It's very easy to use. But what's interesting is, and this is actually in the app when you launch it, but also on the GitHub page, in the terms of use, we see, by using this project or its source code for any purpose and in any shape or form, you grant your implicit agreement to the following statements. You condemn Russia and its military aggression against Ukraine. You recognize that Russia is an occupant that unlawfully invaded a sovereign state. You support Ukraine's territorial integrity, including its claims over temporarily occupied territories of Crimea and Donbass. You reject false narratives perpetuated by Russian state propaganda. And then to learn more and to donate, you can click here, and then glory to Ukraine. So I did a little bit of research on this because I was like, whoa, that's a lot different from SQLite's stance, right? This is very strong.
Yeah.
So I did a little bit of research. The creator is Ukrainian, lives in I forget the name of the city, but lives in Ukraine, actively is affected by this situation, right? And it was kind of a little interesting for me because, again, I don't want to get into politics on this show, but the Russia-Ukraine thing is something that I don't know a lot about. And I kind of had to read these carefully and think, like, do I want to use this software, right? And I think if you read them verbatim, I think I agree with all these things, right? Because I do condemn military aggression just generally. And I do reject false narratives wherever they may be. I try to. So I went ahead and used it. But this was like this was kind of what sparked the idea for this episode for me, is like, there's a lot to unpack here. Let's say I did disagree with these things. Would it be unethical for me to use this software?
That's what I was going to ask. Would you have not used it if you disagreed with any of those?
I would at least look around for another tool, right? I mean, I don't know. If it was like, I implicitly agree with a country being bombed, like I would feel really morally conflicted to use the software. And the thing that's weird about it is, I mean, so this is a good tool, and I gave it a star on GitHub, but like by using it, do I support the creator just from using it?
Right. Yeah. I think it's interesting to contrast that with the SQLite one, just because it very explicitly is saying by using this, you are agreeing to these values, and the SQLite one is very much saying you don't have to agree to the values, right?
Yeah, this is just a general guide.
Even though in this, these kinds of things are not enforceable at all, right? Like there's no way for him to, the author of this project, to confirm that you agree with all these things. I guess that's my first question. Do you think there's value in doing that? Do you think there's value in putting a statement like that in an open source project where it's completely, no way to enforce it, no intention of enforcing it, I'm assuming, even if there was a way?
Yeah, I don't know. And I mean, part of me, I feel like it's kind of antithetical to open source software, right? I mean, the point of open source is that you can use this for anything. You can make money off of it. You can use it for free. You can change it. You can do whatever you want. And this is a really interesting kind of conundrum here where we're doing that, but we're also saying you implicitly agree to believe a certain thing, right? Which is, I'm just not aware of any other type of like moral, ethical dilemma like this, even.
Yeah, that does seem very strange, and I kind of agree with you that regardless of whatever whatever restrictions anyone is placing on their open source project, I kind of agree that it goes against the spirit of it, which is just that you should be able to access the source code and modify it to your liking and use it for your purposes. It doesn't really have anything to do with what you think.
Yeah. And it is also a little funny to me that it's like, this is a Discord exporter tool, right? This is a tool that's very just unrelated to anything else. I think it would make a little bit more sense to me if this were, I don't know, like something that had some sort of political element to it, like maybe like Mapbox or something, right? Mm-hmm. Where there's, these lines have political ties to them.
Does he have other repos? Do they all say that?
Oh, he does have other repos, and I haven't looked. YouTube downloader. Let's look at this. Yeah, same thing. Same thing in the terms of use for YouTube downloader. Lightbulb, I don't know what this does. Yeah, it looks like he put this terms of service in each of his repos.
Yeah.
So it's just a blanket. If you use his software, you have to not like Russia.
And so that seems like someone just wanting to use their platform, basically. Like, regardless of, how big or how small the platform is, they feel like they have some eyes on them and they should express their views.
Mm. Oh, so by the way, his real name is Alexei, and he lives in Kiev. So and that to me, I mean, that's kind of an interesting question. Would that change my view if he was from California? Because to me, it's like, oh, I understand why this is something you're passionate about, and I understand why you might think, hey, this little thing that I can do to change this situation, I'm going to do what I can. I don't know. It's just the whole thing was so bizarre to me. But it's also interesting to think, this is an open source tool. This is something that he made and put out there for free. I haven't ever given this person any money. Is it like, do I owe them something in like paying attention to their political causes? Mm-hmm. I mean, I think, a lot of developers, we talked about this a little bit in the Art Thief episode. A lot of developers, they do this for like a kind of a pride kind of thing, right? Well, being Ukrainian is part of who Alexei is, right? So it's almost by representing his country, that ties into that maybe. But I don't have a conclusive thought on this. It's just something I found so interesting that I wanted to bring up on the podcast.
Yeah, I don't really have a conclusive thought either. I guess I kind of feel like my reactions to this are a little bit knee-jerk just because, I'm thinking about this for the first time, I guess. So I'm kind of just riffing. But, yeah, I think, I guess I don't really love the idea of someone saying you have to believe certain things to use this piece of open source software. I wouldn't say that we don't owe open source project maintainers anything. I don't necessarily think we need to care about the things that they care about in terms of political causes and things like that. I don't know that. I just don't think the wheels of open source would even be able to move at that point, right? Like if I had to look into what is the guy who maintains Image Magic? What does he believe?
That's a good point.
I don't know that we would ever get anywhere if we really had to look into that for every single open source product. I mean, every single Linux server in the world is just this stack of open source software maintained by thousands of people over the years. That's like, I just don't know that it's even feasible to do that.
No, that's a very good point. Because, I mean, there are things that Richard Stallman has said that I disagree with. There are things that Linus Torvalds has said that I disagree with, or that I wouldn't say. I don't think anything that I vehemently disagree with. But, there's like, it does kind of open this can of worms, right? Like, can I scrutinize the belief system of everybody who makes every single thing that I've ever used? I don't think that's feasible.
Yeah. I think the way that I would prefer it to see it done is to, like, I think it's totally above board to have an open source maintainer direct people to their passion. Maybe that's like before we started recording here, we were talking about Vim and his passion for children in Uganda, and there's like a charity he set up and stuff like that. Maybe that's the model that I would prefer to see. You know what I mean? The open source software, I made this, here it is, here's the source code. Also, if you're interested in this stuff, here's a charity, this is something I'm passionate about. Maybe you'd be passionate about this too.
Right.
I understand also, of course, that the war in Ukraine is a little more urgent. It's like going on this very second. But
yeah, and then, yeah, because, I mean, he does provide links for donations and stuff, but he also has this very aggressive terms of use, which, right, like, what's his name? Bram Moulinar didn't do. He just provided, hey, you can, this is something I care about, that if you want to donate, you can support. Yeah. I think that's enough about that. There's one other project I wanted to bring up called Vesktop by Vencord, which is just a client. It's a alternate client for the desktop Discord app. And this one doesn't have anything crazy in the terms of service or anything like that that I know of. But what I found interesting was that on FlatHub, there is a lot of comments regarding their desktop icon. So the icon for Vesktop has a rainbow in the background. I don't know also if that's something that came later, if the icon has always been like that, or if this is their logo in front of now what would be an LGBT flag, or if it's like just always been like that. What I found interesting is there was a lot of comments from people who had very strong opinions about having a rainbow flag in the icon of an application that they use, which I just found very interesting because, I don't know, I mean, I didn't even think about it. When I downloaded this app, I wasn't even sure if that actually was like a gay rights flag, or if that was just like a rainbow. But some people definitely have interpreted it as being a gay flag, and they vehemently disagree with that.
The comments are saying they're going to switch to a different application because of the icon.
Let me find. Should I read some of these? Okay, this is in quotes. Can I read these? Will Spotify be mad at me?
I think it's okay to read. These are on public forums,
yeah.
Right?
So this guy says, I do not... Okay, so first of all, if you... This is the top one on like my software app in OpenSUSE. It says, I do not support the store icon of Desktop because incompatible with my views in life. However, I do love everything else on this app. Great job to whoever made this, thank you. I again empathize that I don't hate the people who support this Desktop icon on store, so please do not get me wrong. We can disagree, but I have no rights to hate any human being except the evildoers and wrongdoers. I took 3 stars off because of that Vesktop store icon or logo. So that one's kind of perplexing because I'm getting kind of mixed signals from, doesn't hate anyone, but also I'm going to give you a bad review for supporting gay rights. I don't know.
You feel strongly about it to leave a negative review.
Yeah. Let's see this one. That last one was anonymous. This one is by Devin. There's nothing wrong with the icon. If you have so much of a problem with rainbow on an app icon, then you can easily change. Then maybe you should do some self-reflection. And then an actual review. It has some slight issues with GTK themes, but otherwise I love it. I think I agree. So the subject line is "Good app, you guys are dorks." That's pretty good.
That is good.
That's pretty good. So I don't think I saw anyone who said they weren't going to use it. It says one can dislike the icon even if they are a member of the community the rainbow has come to represent. I just think it's poorly designed. App is great though.
Poorly designed rainbow?
I guess. You know what? I mean, the rainbow is fine. I don't know. I like the icon. I think the logo is good. Oh yeah, this one we read earlier. I like this a lot. Downloaded this solely because some boomer was triggered by the icon good app. See, I feel like this guy's a little bit of a dork. You think this guy's a dork?
Because he is leaving a comment to, make fun of somebody else?
No, I think because he says he downloaded solely because some boomer was triggered by the icon. I don't think I'm going to download things. Well, I mean, he's supporting the app, I guess. Supporting this cause. I don't know. That's a little weird to me. I think I use Vesktop because I think it's a good app. I think that supporting gay rights is also cool.
I think that downloading an app is a pretty minimal action. Like if you see an app and there's a bunch of people in the comments saying I disagree with the icon, and all you gotta do is download the app to show your support by increasing download numbers, why not?
Okay, yeah, he's not a dork. This guy says, love this app, runs great, runs Discord great with minimal flaws. To the icon haters, seethe, cope, and grow up.
There's a lot of action going on in the comments section for this app.
Yeah, and that's why I was like, dude, this is crazy. I didn't even think... basically what happened was the official Discord app was just not working for me, so I just started looking around for another one, and this one seemed good. And I didn't even know... I mean, this is an interesting situation where I didn't even know I was making a political statement by using this application.
Right.
I thought I was just trying to talk, share memes on Discord with my friends. So,
yeah,
kind of ties in with the theme, I think.
I think those are three very interesting case studies, though, to I don't know, contrast and compare. And I don't know that we have all the information about all of these projects going on, but I think that those are 3 different levels of involvement with political views, or not even political in some cases, but 3 different views, kind of imposing your views on someone, on the user of your open source software. In one case, they say, we believe this, you don't have to believe it to use the software.
Mm-hmm. The SQLite model.
The SQLite model. In the second case, he explicitly says you do have to believe these things in order to use this software. And the third doesn't really make any statement at all except for the app icon that people have interpreted. I mean, I think he certainly is making a statement, but there's nothing explicit in the README file for that one that says you have to believe this. It's just a show of support by changing the app icon, right? Right.
The README, just a regular general GNU license. And another thing I find interesting, and maybe this is just because these other things don't have as much of a platform for discussion, but it seems like the one that just has an icon has a lot of discussion going on.
Yeah.
And then the one that's you will think this is what we think when you use this software. I don't see anything, there's no discussion. I guess it's not that popular of a repo, but it doesn't seem like I don't see any discussion here about this issue. And then, well, people have discussed the SQLite thing, but I guess it's just so like standoffish about it that I don't think there's any reason to get upset, I guess.
Yeah, I have trouble. I have trouble seeing people taking a lot of offense to the SQLite one just because it is so like, I don't know, it's not making any demands on you really.
Yeah, I know there's been some Hacker News threads where people talk about it, but I don't know if anyone really has strong feelings about this. One thing I would say is like, what do you feel that open source software in and of itself is maybe a political statement?
I think at one time it was. I don't think it is nowadays. I really do. I think there was a time when, people were really fighting against something, right? Like there was really this fight going on between big companies, IBMs and things like that, who wanted to make closed proprietary software, and the fight to keep things open was a real political statement, and maybe could have gotten you in trouble with some of the big companies. I think that was like a hard thing to maintain with the internet, mm-hmm. and I think the internet made open source just much more of a much easier to follow model, I guess. It would just be really hard to have kind of like a monolithic big tech only model in the age of the internet, I think. So these days I say open source, not political statement. What do you think?
Probably not, but I'm just kind of trying to think of different ways to look at it. I mean, this is something you see sometimes in media. Like, people will sometimes be like, oh, why are they injecting politics into this movie or into this video game or this book or whatever? And a lot of times the response is, well, media is political. It's all political. Everything is politics. Everything has a layer of political thought to it. So I don't know. I just kind of think, I don't think that's true here.
Yeah.
But, it's interesting to think about.
I think that's probably true on the level of, I think every individual repo probably has some kind of political bent just because of its, that human beings have contributed to it and they have political bents. I don't think that open source software is itself political.
I would say that the open source movement is. I mean, there are people who, have made it like a political stance, basically, to support. Like there are by default, NixOS will only support open source projects for installation. Mm-hmm. You have to actually turn it on to use other applications. So, I mean, I guess that's not inherently political, but there is like. Kind of feels like it is.
and Ubuntu used to be that way about drivers. I don't know if it still is, but you had to specifically enable third-party drivers that were like for your NVIDIA card or whatever, because
right.
there was no open source equivalent.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's definitely a lot of tie-in to kind of capitalism versus socialism and that sort of thing, and there's a lot of overlap, it seems, in technology with just extreme political ideas in general, I would say.
Extreme political ideas?
I think so, yeah. I mean, what's his name? Terry Davis? The creator of Temple OS, who famously would say lots of slurs and thought that the FBI was following him and all those things. I mean, I guess that's an outlier, but really more technology as a whole, right? Like, the Unabomber was a very well-respected mathematician, and he was very good at engineering. So,
but I hated technology, right?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
I think technology pervades every corner. I think in this day and age, it's just I mean, maybe it's just that politics have invaded every corner also. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think I don't know that there's much in our world that's untouched by technology. I don't think it's quite right to say that it has like an association with extreme viewpoints, because it does, but it also has an association with extreme mainstream with like, you know, it has an association with mainstream viewpoints and everything in between. It's just everywhere all the time. It's the water we're swimming in.
That's true, yeah. Just right now, I remembered this thing. Have you ever heard of this export of cryptography from the United States? I'm just looking at the wiki page right now. The export of cryptography from the United States to other countries has experienced various levels of restrictions over time. World War II illustrated that code breaking and cryptography can play an integral part in national security and the ability to prosecute war. Changes in technology and the preservation of free speech have been competing factors in the regulation and constraint of cryptographic technologies for export. The interesting part that I want to bring up was this. Export restricted RSA encryption source code printed on a I'm looking at a description of an image on Wikipedia. Export restricted RSA encryption source code printed on a t-shirt made the t-shirt an export restricted munition as a freedom of speech protest against U.S. encryption export restrictions. Changes in the export law means that it is no longer illegal to export this t-shirt from the United States or U.S. citizens to show it to foreigners. But basically, there was a time where if you had this t-shirt with this code on it, it was illegal for you to send this t-shirt out of the United States of America.
Yeah. It was classified as a munition.
Right. That feels related to what we're talking about, right?
I remember the big deal when I was younger about this was PGP, right? Was maybe PGP uses RSA, but I just remember it was a big deal. It was like, this is the strongest encryption, and you couldn't export it. And even to this day, you have to, like, if you've ever uploaded an app to the Apple Store, if you want to distribute internationally, and you make like an HTTPS call, you have to declare in your iOS app, in your iOS submission. Yeah. Yes, I use strong security. Yeah, it's because of all this stuff.
Yeah, and it's just it. I guess the point I'm making is like, not any of the examples we've looked at, but there are cases where code is inherently political, right? Or has political ties, right? I mean, there is software that can be used as weapons or as tools of war, I guess you could say. More so than weapons, really.
Sure. I mean, do you think anything developed in the open source sphere, though, falls into that category legitimately? I'm sure that, like, governments worldwide would try to classify all kinds of software as, you know, objectionable or non-exportable or whatever. But do you think that there are any open source projects that genuinely would fall into that category?
Not that I'm aware of. Well, it's weird because, like, when you talk about like cryptography and stuff, the fact that those things are open source is kind of like part of what makes them work in a way. You know?
Exactly.
The fact that anyone can look at it and have it. Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think there's anything that really falls into it. But another thing that's interesting to think about is every country has their own laws, right? And so when you put something out there on the internet for the whole globe, it's like, this might be illegal sometimes in some places. You know, that's a thing that's come up with like censorship laws, right? Like, you know, people might say, well, YouTube, this content that you allow on your platform is illegal in some places. And they might say, well, we don't care, which they should say, I think.
Right. Whose laws are you abiding by when you're transferring things across many countries, right? Yeah. I still think we're in the Wild West with that stuff for the most part, right? We're still kind of like figuring that out.
And what is that what's that alphabet soup about, like Europe's like laws about privacy?
Is it the DMA?
No, it's like I think it starts with a G. like European privacy law, GDPR,
Oh, right,
General
right,
Data
right.
Protection Regulation.
Oh yeah.
Right. So, like, if you live in Europe and you tell Facebook or Twitter or whoever that you want them to erase your personal data, they have to do so. But if you live in another country, that doesn't apply unless there's like some other act that I don't know about. Like, isn't that interesting? You know, some like different users have different rights, and different users have different required features in your application.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I think that's crazy, and that's like part of what we're struggling with as the internet continues to kind of solidify, right? But GDPR kind of is an interesting study because it did affect everybody, right?
Oh, yeah.
We all got these pop-ups all of a sudden that are like every single web page is now prompting you for this stuff, and for you and I, it's like, wait, we don't live in Europe and we don't abide by these laws or have the protections like you were talking about, the right to be forgotten kind of thing. We don't have that right, but the websites are potentially serving people in those jurisdictions, so they do have to abide by that.
Right. So it influences the entire landscape.
Yeah.
So that being said, talking about these different projects and these different weird political things, I don't know where I'm going. I just thought it was like, you know, this is an interesting thing to talk about on the podcast. What, like, I don't know. Do you have any examples of like weird stuff like this or anything you think of?
I can't think of anything. Like I said, I wasn't even aware of the MySQL one or the SQLite one. I wanted to ask you though, like, let's say you had an open source project that had a lot of eyes on it. You had, you know, thousands of stars on GitHub or whatever, and you had a political cause that you were really passionate about. Well, would you feel comfortable using your open source project as a platform to push your political views?
See, I don't know. I mean, I would like to think that I would go... I can definitely see myself doing like the Vim approach of like, hey, here's a link to a thing I care about, so here's some exposure for this thing. That's it, you know?
Yeah.
I don't really imagine myself saying, you know, we stand with this, like, you know, unless, I guess, if it's, I mean, I don't know, like, if you think, like, I would be fine making my icon, putting a gay flag in my icon if I thought that was going to help things, you know?
Yeah.
What do you think? Would you?
I don't think I would. I'm not a very political person in general. I probably have close friends who don't know any of my political views.
Yeah.
So I think I'd feel a little weird putting it in an open source project, or using any kind of platform to promote, you know, a political belief. But I don't know. I totally understand, especially coming from a Ukrainian who, like, feels catastrophic, right? This is world-ending kind of stuff. If you don't stand up for it now, then when? I totally understand wanting to use any platform you have to, like, put that stuff out there. It's not... I don't know. I don't want to, like, compare political issues here.
Right.
But, you know, this is a big deal, and it does feel like the kind of thing that, if not now, when? It's like, I totally understand wanting to use every tool at your disposal to get that message out there in this situation.
Yeah, if the country I lived in was like actively being attacked by invaders, I think that'd be a situation where maybe I would, you know, just use whatever platform I had.
And I don't know the guy, but I'm going to guess he's not under any delusion that, like, this is going to save the world. It's really just about, like, putting it out there in every corner of the internet that you have some control over, right? You just put it out there and get more eyes on it and spread the word.
I get that feeling too. I get the vibe that he is taking the stance of, like, hey, I can sleep well at night knowing that I did the smallest, littlest thing that I can do to help this situation. I think that's what he thinks.
Yeah.
Which I can sympathize with. I'm kind of curious, like, okay, so Vencord, I wonder, like, are they...
Vencord are the makers of the...
Vesktop, yeah.
Of Vesktop, okay.
They have a website. I don't know if they are specifically, like, tied to the gay community in some way, or if this is something that they just decided to do. I don't really see anything... Let's see here. Yeah, I don't know anything about that, and I don't know. I mean, let's go that direct. Like, does that matter? I mean, because we do sometimes see companies and organizations that do kind of this performative political stance taking. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, it's Gay Pride Month, so they change their logo, and then Gay Pride Month is over, and then they change it back. Some people heavily scrutinize that. Some people think, well, hey, if they're making a difference, then who cares? I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think in general, yeah, I'm not a big fan of companies doing that. I do think that's a little gross and weird to like use causes of any kind as kind of a marketing opportunity. And to kind of seize on that and just be like, oh, Gay Pride Month, there's a chance to make a buck. Like, that seems really gross and cynical to me.
I agree.
So that's my stance on big companies doing it. I don't know, if someone running an open source project just wants to do that for the month on their own icon, on their own app that they host on GitHub, like, I feel... I think that the big thing for me there is whether they're kind of like being opportunistic about it and taking advantage. I don't imagine that most of the people on GitHub are doing that kind of thing in order to just like cynically get more eyes on their project and get more stars on GitHub or whatever. Like, I think that most people doing that on GitHub are genuine in wanting to show their support. And so, you can't read people's hearts and minds, but one of those feels really gross and weird, and one of them feels fine to me.
And I agree. I can't imagine that like Vesktop is doing this for some weird, nefarious reason or anything.
Yeah.
But I understand why that might annoy some people. But kind of going back to, like, is this making a difference, and that kind of idea. The interesting thing to me about the Vesktop situation is that when you look through the comments and you see how many people are upset, and you see people that literally downloaded it because other people were upset, it seems like, I guess, it did make a little bit of a difference, right? I mean,
that's true.
Some people seem to have been affected by this.
That's a really good point, and it's very much worth keeping in mind when, because that's another thing that I think the corporate kind of glomming onto these causes. Another thing that happens is that we kind of get like oversaturated and kind of stop paying attention, and so I think that's an important thing to note. Yeah, this small act did make a difference. Like, some people took notice. Some people were really, really bent out of shape about a rainbow icon.
So, there's a recent development. I just discovered this right now. On Vencord's what the hell? So this is the Vencord project repo. It says here there's a disclaimer. Client modifications, or actually no, using Vencord violates Discord's terms of service. Client modifications are against Discord's terms of service. However, Discord is pretty indifferent about them, and there are no known cases of users getting banned for using client mods. So you should generally be fine as long as you don't use any plugins that implement abusive behavior. but no worries, all inbuilt plugins are safe to use. Regardless, if your account is very important to you and it getting disabled would be a disaster for you, you should probably not use any client mods not exclusive to Vencord just to be safe. Additionally, make sure not to post screenshots with Vencord in a server where you might get banned for it. So here I am discovering that I've been breaking Discord's terms of service this entire time.
I'm turning you in.
Yeah. FBI, open up. And it's crazy because this is kind of like, this is pretty much exactly what we've been talking about, right? The Discord is indifferent about it. It doesn't seem like they go after anybody, but it is against their terms of service.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm going to continue using Vencord because it doesn't suck, whereas the Discord default client does suck on Linux at least. And damn, this just changed the whole game for me. I mean,
wait. What changed? Do you feel uncomfortable now?
Well, no. I this whole time I was thinking I'm going to respect the terms of service of all these, of whatever the terms of service is. But now I'm discovering that I'm just going to completely disregard Discord's terms of service. As soon as it inconvenienced me, my stance has completely changed.
Yep. That sounds pretty human.
Well, and it is interesting, though, because it's like, this is like, okay, so Discord is like a large for-profit business. And I have no idea why client modifications would be against their terms of service. I can't think of any good faith reasons for that.
I don't use Discord, but I assume it has to do with the abusive plugins, whatever they were talking about.
Right, yeah.
So third-party clients can do things that the official client, they know that's not going to do, right?
I suppose, yeah. But I mean, if the terms of service were you can't use any third-party clients that are going, you can't do any abusive stuff in any other client that has other plugins that do abusive stuff, I would get that. But this blanket, like, you can't use any client modifications at all, seems draconian to me.
Yeah.
Damn, dude. I wonder how many terms of service I've broken.
Oh, man.
If you just think about it. I mean, like, I go in video games and I cuss at people, my friends that are in my chat on my team, people who know me. I don't just go
strangers.
Yeah, at least not since turning probably my 13th birthday. But I wonder.
We break them all the time, every day. And I really think we need to, as a culture, take a look at terms of service and radically simplify them so that they're understandable. Think about that. When you accept a terms of service, you're accepting a legal document that someone could take you to court over potentially.
Yeah.
We gotta stop that. That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, what it needs to be is I think it's really important that the terms of service be out there so that you can explicitly ignore them, like I am now doing with Discord. Now that I know I'm doing it.
Yeah.
So I'm doing it with the knowledge that my account could get banned. Damn, dude. This just reminded me also. Remember how I'm pretty sure. Have you ever been a Windows user primarily?
It's been more than 10 years.
Did you ever use WinRAR?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So you remember how it had that pop up every time you opened WinRAR? It would say WinRAR is a free service or is not a free service, and you should pay for it.
Yep.
And you would click X and continue to use it for free.
Yep.
That's kind of interesting, right? I mean, because I believe officially, I don't know if there was an official trial period, or I don't, because I never read the whole thing really, but yeah, okay, the license. It's a try before you buy. It may be used without charge for 40 days, and we all used it more than that.
Yeah.
Right. So that's an interesting case of everyone kind of just ignoring the license because they could.
I think it's really interesting to so compare that. I mean, really, the reason that we kept using it was because it didn't place any restrictions, right? Sublime
Yeah.
you can use for free for as long as you want, but you can't. There's a pop-up or something annoying.
Yeah. But it's just like advising you to pay for it, right?
Yeah.
Kind of. Whereas WinRAR was really saying you need to pay for this.
I think part of the difference for me also is that, with Sublime, I'm using it and I'm trying to get work done, and the pop-up was annoying. With WinRAR, I used it once every 3 months
you
to
didn't really
like.
do it a lot.
I don't know. I feel I really don't want to pay for a program that I'm just using like every once in a while to extract a file somebody sent me. You know what I mean? That's part of it.
Yeah, I mean, there were other tools. I mean, I know there are now, like there's pzip and 7zip, and like there's other tools that do the same thing. Why didn't we use those? Actually,
I use 7zip.
but like, well, actually, I think Windows now, like later versions, has it has it integrated now. You can actually just extract files.
Oh,
like,
really?
Yeah, I think Windows 10 introduced that.
That
Hallelujah.
takes so long.
But I'm thinking like, okay, back in like whatever 2008, when I was clicking that X button on that notification in WinRAR, were there other options for me? I feel like there were.
I think 7zip has been around for a long time.
So like, because the argument I think would be, if there wasn't any other way to do it, you really should pay for it, right? Even if you're rarely doing it.
Yeah. Wasn't there a file format specific to WinRAR? Am I misremembering that? I thought there was a .rar file that was like.
There was .rar.
And I don't think 7zip and all them can handle RAR. At least, I'm trying to remember like 15 years ago. But
I think you're right, but I imagine that after. It seems like at some point people just stopped using those and they started just using regular zips.
yeah,
Because why would you use that?
I don't remember what the point of it was. Maybe it was like better compression back then or something.
Yeah. I guess it just wasn't. I guess maybe zip wasn't as standardized yet. Seems pretty standard now.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it. You get it in terms of service, and sometimes you just ignore it. But I think the important thing is that if you put it out there, some people will see it, right? So if you've got something you want to say, there's a way to say it.
Yeah. Yeah. Everything is a platform. Everything that you have some control over is like a way of putting things out there, and that includes your GitHub projects. If you got something to say it in your GitHub project.
Yeah, or subscribe to 1X Developer Podcast.
1X Developer Podcast.
Hey everybody, this is Colin. First and foremost, I want to thank you all for listening to this episode of the 1X Developer Podcast, and let you know that if you have any questions, comments, or if you just want to tell us about your day, you can reach us at X, formerly known as Twitter, at 1X Developer Podcast. We're also on YouTube at 1X Developer Podcast. You can email us if you're weird at 1xdeveloperpodcast at protonmail.com. And lastly, don't forget to follow, subscribe, all that stuff, so you don't miss any further episodes of the 1X Developer Podcast. Thanks so much. See you next time.